Hi everyone. Adobe reported fiscal 2022 fourth quarter results on Thursday, December 15. So I'm going to do a brief review of the key figures that came out in the report. So Adobe overall thinks its shares are undervalued is my theme takeaway from this report. Revenue in the first quarter increased to 4.5 billion, which was up 10% from last year. That was impressive considering the headwinds that tech companies are facing in the recent few quarters. Diluted earnings per share of $2.53 was not too bad, down from $2.57 year over year. We all know how macroeconomic headwinds are raising cost pressures and companies are having to pay more for everything from labor to materials, and so that's pressuring margins. Impressively, RPO, which stands for remaining performance obligations, at the end of the quarter totaled 15.919 billion. RPO for Adobe is usually people will sign up for Adobe's services. For instance, you might pay for 1 year of Adobe's Creative Cloud services, but Adobe cannot count that as all of that as revenue all at once. It can only count it as revenue as the months go by and you use the service. So meanwhile, Adobe counts that payment as a remaining performance obligation. So an RPO of 15 billion means it's got that many orders for its products and services that is going to be fulfilled unless they get canceled, which is not very likely to happen. It could happen, but it's not very likely to happen depending on which products or services they are. So that's good news for investors that Adobe's got this backlog of 15 billion in revenue that it can go through, and that relieves some concerns as the chances of recession are rising. Investors can be a little bit comforted that Adobe has this $15.2 billion backlog in orders. The other thing management commented on is that the results from the acquisition of Figma are not yet reflected in Adobe's results or forecasts. They're on schedule to close the deal in 2023. Of course, Adobe has gotten a lot of flack for this acquisition. They paid a really expensive price for Figma. They've taken on a lot of heat for this acquisition, so they're going to be under pressure to show the benefits of this acquisition. Hasn't closed yet, but you keep that in mind as you're following Adobe over the next few quarters, over the next few years. And like I mentioned in the beginning, Adobe repurchased 5 million shares of its own stock during the quarter. That tells me that management thinks its shares are undervalued. Of course, the stock is down for the year, and so management could think that investors are maybe underestimating Adobe's prospects and they think the stock is undervalued. It's always a good sign to me when management is buying back its shares. It tells me that they believe in the stock, that they feel that it's undervalued, and I take that as a good signal if I'm an equity holder, if I'm a stockholder. Finally, Adobe is forecasting 2023 revenue growth of 9% at the midpoint and earnings per share of $10.90. This was a relief to investors and the market. The stock was up on the day following the earnings release, even though the market has been down yesterday and today. Adobe stock is up today based on what investors saw from this earnings report and the forecast for 2023. Like I've mentioned earlier, there's a lot of fear about an economic recession coming up over the next few quarters or sometime in 2023. The fact that Adobe is forecasting such solid, nearly double-digit revenue growth, and in fact, if you exclude the currency impact, Adobe is forecasting more than mid double-digit revenue growth, and so that's a good sign to investors who were relieved that, okay, management sees robust demand ahead. The forecast for 2023 is solid. It bought back 5 million shares. Things are not looking that bad for Adobe, and so that caused investors some relief, and there was a rally in the stock on the day afterwards. All right, so that's all I've got for this Adobe earnings update. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.